Okay, thank you, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining. We are pleased to welcome to our institution Mr. Alok Kohli, and on behalf of Dome IIT Roorkee, I extend to him a very warm and hearty welcome. Mr. Alok Kohli has traversed a long career in the corporate world, spanning for more than 17 years. A pioneer in the food industry, he started his corporate journey in Blast as a product head. He was a brand manager for Marico Limited for 8 years. He had a short stint as a head of marketing for Aviva India. He was also associated with Coca-Cola and acted as the country director for the company in Nepal. Later, he became the regional director of Coca-Cola for Western and Central region in India. Presently, he is working as the business director for DSM. Being bestowed with such an ebullient and diverse work experience, I firmly believe that the student of Dome IIT Roorkee will benefit from his expertise and knowledge on marketing, supply chain, and general management. His insights will definitely help budding managers like us who want to venture into their own startups. So, without further ado, I would request Mr. Alok Kohli to share his insights and enlighten us through the session. Over to you, sir.
All right, cool. Thank you. That was a very kind sort of welcome. So thank you for that. It's a pleasure to be here. I know that all of us are working from home or studying from home in this case. So I'm pretty okay if you want to take off your ties and jacket and we can have a chat. Yeah. So I know the institute would have told you, I was, corporate wear ties, but it's a little foolish to be sitting at home, on your study table and, with stuff in the background and jacket and tie. Yeah. So I'm okay if you guys want to take it off. Yeah. So it's a pleasure to be here. When I asked Sarvesh, and I'm sorry, Sarvesh, I'm gonna take your trip a bit. Huh? I asked him, I said, boss, what do you want me to speak on? And he gave me some very, very tough topics, like the kinds I had to use my dictionary for. And my favorite one was some differential treatment of brand in post-pandemic and all. So I said, boss, I can't do this, right? So I'm going to speak. I'm going to speak about something which I find is very close to my heart, which is the idea of purpose. And I'm very happy for you to sort of raise your hand and ask me questions, and I would try and answer those at the beginning or at the end. And it's a slightly eclectic topic, right? I mean, purpose is very sort of, it's not stuff that any corporate guy would come and speak about, right? And they'd speak about differential treatment of brands in post-pandemic, apocalyptic, something that Sarvesh gave, right? So jokes apart, what's the batch size? Yeah, anyway,
Sir, 71 students. We are 71.
right? So I got about 30 LinkedIn invites, right? So for all the lazy guys, I'll tell you who I am. Yeah. He said, so I worked in Coke and Marico, primarily in FMCG. Yeah. And let me share my deck because I almost forgot. Yeah. Just give me 1 second. Huh? Just let me know when you guys see it. Yeah. Did you guys see? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Now
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Oh, fantastic. Perfect, right? So, sorry, I already said hi. Yeah. And I was speaking with the lazy folks, right, who did not send me a LinkedIn invite. And please don't send me LinkedIn invites. I'll accept it, but it's fine, right? So, I've worked across, sales and marketing and business roles. I worked for Marico. I'm sure you know Marico, and I'm sure you know Coke. Let me ask you a question. Do you know DSM? Anyway,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
Yes, sir. DSM is a Dutch company and it was founded in 1990s, 1902, and after that it's mostly active in different segments like health, nutrition, minerals.
Perfect.
It's a long journey of 118 years old.
Right. So before you went on the net to check out about DSM, did you know about DSM? like 1902 and all, like मेरे को नहीं याद, but full marks due to Tushar. I mean, I'm reasonably sure you get really good grades, right? So did you know about
Only we
it?
heard it.
Yeah.
Only we heard it in Tamil Nadu, sir. Only once.
All
To be
right. So
frank, I did not have a good idea, but yeah, I heard about Kargil, and I think some days back DSM, if I am not wrong.
now there's a tie-up with them. So DSM is one of those large companies that you've never heard of. Okay, honestly, and so nothing against anybody who's not heard of DSM. I'm guaranteeing you, you would have used a DSM product and not realize it's from DSM. It's primarily a B2B organization, right? So if you've consumed an Amul product or a Nestle product or a GSK product, chances are you've sort of had our vitamins, right? Or if you've taken a multivitamin type tablet, chances are that DSM vitamins were in it. If you guys have, I'm sure all of you have driven a vehicle, the plastics would typically come from DSM. Or if you have an iPhone and have an original Apple cable, coating on that would come from DSM, right? So it's an extremely large sort of B2B company. I look after one of the newest initiatives, which is called Mandi, and we'll speak about it later, which is the B2C initiative, right? I mean, that's sort of my forte. Yeah. So with that, let me sort of start, right? What is purpose, and who can sort of? I want a commentary on what purpose is about. What is the purpose of business?
Sir, the main purpose I think is to earn profit, to earn money, to get rich.
Perfect.
Stakeholder profitability. So stakeholder profitability is the main purpose.
Profit share.
To be sustainable, there
customers.
is three things. One is people, profit, and planet.
Sorry, your voice cracked. Can you repeat?
To be
It's echoing a bit.
and one is
Tushar, your voice is breaking. Can you write in the comment box? I think, sir, there's a connectivity issue at his end.
No problem, right? So I think the comments are interesting, right? Everybody is saying that there is this. It's about you have to make money and you have to create value for your shareholders, right? Yeah. So Tushar wrote something like people, planet, profit. Sure. Yeah. But I think most organizations do not treat purpose as a central theme. Okay, and I'm gonna share interesting stuff around this. Okay, so I think like all good folks, I went to Google and I said, let me find out what purpose is. Yeah, and if you go to Google right now, this is what you'll find. There's a screenshot that I took today, and like all good B school guys, I made the deck and finished it half an hour back. Yeah, so but this is a screenshot that you would find. And there are three very interesting words here, right? There's motivation, there's cause, and there's resolve, right? So now, motivation, sure, maybe for money, but is money a cause? Yes and no, right? So the question is that can businesses be more, or really do more, right? And I think further down, right, I will try and explore what purpose can be for you, and how can you and business sort of have that meeting, right? Let me share a really interesting example with you on what purpose is, right? Anybody heard of Con British? Yeah. He's got some great videos on YouTube. I think you should listen to him. An extremely inspirational story. So this gentleman basically got cancer, and he was completely overwhelmed, and he said that I need to beat it, and to beat it he used his own creative process, right, to actually come up with stuff to say that can I motivate myself and people to actually beat, cancer? Okay. Now he's in the business of creativity, right? He's a creative director, an extremely famous one at that. Yeah. And he said that can I use my creativity to come up and do something a little larger, right? Did he make money in the bargain? Probably. Did he become more famous as a creative director? Probably. Yeah. And I think I love this creative, right? And God forbid, if anybody's been with a cancer survivor or somebody with cancer at home or a very sort of rare case, it's the entire thing about the disease which is more than the disease itself, right? The entire story. And he said that imagine your cancer is a hot air balloon and you are like a safety pin, right? It does not trivialize the disease. It is a giant hot air balloon, but it gives you almost like the power to say that you can win, right? So this for me is a very interesting space of an individual purpose and an organization purpose starting to meet, right? It was his own organization, so maybe it was easy. Yeah. Let me share a very interesting personal example here. Yeah. So this was when I was in Nepal, and there was an earthquake, and I don't know if anybody here is from Nepal or has been to Nepal. It's a poor country, yeah, and the earthquake was devastating, right? And this is a real photograph, right? Of This is somewhere near the epicenter. It's a very famous photograph. All the papers that sort of carried. So the fact was that you're working for a large organization and you're working in a society where you live, thrive, and earn. Members of that society work in your organization, and if they don't do well and they're not doing well, can you still have your purpose as revenue and profit? Yeah. And it's a tough question to ask, right? And then so this happened, and I think the first response was that is the team fine? Do they have enough to eat? Are their houses broken? And that sort of like a month and a half went in that, right? And the next piece was saying that yes, we need to get the business back, but here's a country that's completely down in the doldrums, right? So what do we do, right? So we launched a campaign called Feri Utmecha Nepal, yeah, which in Nepali is basically Nepal with it's Nepalese for Nepal will rise again. Okay, an extremely sort of motivating thought, and it comes a funny anecdote, right? And I was driving through one of the streets, and I saw this graffiti on the wall, and that fundamentally was the genesis of this campaign, saying that as a brand you can sort of offer hope, right? And it was interesting, right? So this photograph that you see of everybody sort of huddled on a stage, yeah, it's the Coke team, and it is somewhere the who's who of Nepal, right? So there's a football team captain. The soccer is like cricket there. It's really big. Okay, so the soccer team captain is there. It's got a prosperous sort of film industry, small, low budget, but the actors are revered, and music scene is really big, and there are about 15 of those, right? And then there are two very interesting characters, one of which you can see. One is Anuradha Koirala. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's CNN Person of the Year, runs a setup called Naiti Nepal that works for destitute women. And the second is and she was there in the campaign that we launched. There's a lady called Annie Choin Dolma, who's one of the foremost sort of spiritual leaders in Buddhism today. Yeah, and all these people didn't take money; they just came in because the idea of purpose sort of got them going. Yeah, it was not money; it was not association with a big brand. It was just the idea of Feri Utnacha Nepal, right? The Nepal will rise again. That sort of got them in, and this is a commercial setup, right? It's a commercial, and it's a relationship of money, right? That somebody said the business of purpose, the purpose of business is to make money and shareholder value. When somebody this is beyond money, right? And then we actually did it, took it one step further. So this photograph on the right is that of a relief camp. I'll play a video. The guy who's singing his name is Adrian Pradhan. One of is he's like the rock star, in that place. Let me know if you can hear the video, and if you can't hear the audio, and if you can't hear it, just tell me. We'll figure out how to solve it. Yeah, can I play? Sorry.
Yes, sir.
And it hangs. Yeah. All right. Let me try and play. Can you hear?
Yes, sir, we can hear.
Yeah, I mean, this video just it still gives me goosebumps. I think after 5 years, and these are people who are out in the street, right? Their homes have been destroyed. It's a camp, and imagine the surprise when you take somebody of the stature of Adrian there. Yeah, and it's a camp that just gets sets up, right? I mean, this is like a 5 minute kind of camp. There's no stage. Takes out his guitar and starts strumming. Yeah, and you can sort of hear the noise and the screech in the background, right? So we did that, and suddenly it was not about business, but it was about purpose. Yeah, slightly larger than yeah. And then there was a phase where I said that, listen, so here's where personal and sort of business purposes sort of thrive, right? And what is my personal purpose to that sense, right? And in the introduction, nobody said, but I took a sabbatical. Yeah, so I took 1 year off. Now in India, when you take a sabbatical, right, fundamentally you got sacked in everybody else's eyes, right? Thinking about how can you take a year off? Yeah, I can tell you that continuity is overrated, and I think all of you should plan to take a year off sometime. Maybe once every 7, 8 years, take a year off. Yeah, and plan for it. I didn't plan for it till till my recent sabbatical, but yeah, you should do it, right? So during my sabbatical, I did some very cool stuff. Yeah, I yeah. So this is me diving, and I became a scuba diver. Now I'm about maybe about 15, 10, 15 dives short of becoming a dive master. So that was fun. Yeah, I took lots of holidays. That on the left is the Dead Sea. If you haven't swam in the Dead Sea, you must. Yeah, I did not want to put a photograph of me swimming. It would not have been very nice. But yeah, there's a photograph of my son, right? And every day it was a summer vacations at that time, and every day we would go for a swim, and I would not pick up my phone and have breakfast with him and teach him to read the newspaper. And that's his look on, getting a burglar. And it's unusual, right? And somewhere in your entire focus on career, these are small things that you start missing, right? And are these as sort of large as the purpose that Singh Burt had a few slides back, where he was a cancer survivor and doing something very large? But no, but all of these are small purposes that have a role. Yeah. And lastly, that was me. It's not that I'm thin today, but that was me about 18 kgs, a little more expensive, more heavier. A very cool sort of the 110 canister that I was carrying between today and that time. Hopefully, I'll knock off in the next couple of years a similar 10 canister, but that's a story for another time, right? So that was me, right? And me sort of almost discovering my own purpose. No great pearls of wisdom I can give you except for the fact that your purpose is yours. Yeah. And then came a very interesting thing in my life is called DSM, right? And DSM is an extremely sort of purpose driven organization. And here, DSM actually stands for doing something meaningful internally, right? Originally, it stood for Dutch State Mines. Yeah. And the question is that if you flip it, it's like, can you be in the business of purpose? Yeah. And I had a business called Mandi, Can anybody tell me what does Mandi stand for? Yeah,
The
Mandi.
wholesale market.
It's a market, sir.
Very true. But in our case, Mandi is actually an acronym for making a nutritional difference to India. Okay, and let me explain how. Yeah, uh, the fact is that half of India is anemic. Yeah, the fact is that amongst the people on this call who work in a, who study in a reasonably good organization, get reasonably good food to eat compared to say many parts of India. Chances are that 1 in 3, 1 in 4 on this call would be anemic. Yeah, anemia is inadequate hemoglobin caused by iron deficiency, which is one of the major causes. Now, when you look at, and many of you would be studying to be marketeers, right? And you would have all learned a little bit of segmenting, targeting, positioning. Yeah, uh, it's half the country. It's one of the largest untapped segments. Now, the question I want to ask you is that if somebody were to tell you, hey, listen, why don't you launch a business to solve anemia? And you'd say, what nonsense. That the medical guys will do. But no, as a food organization, you can make that nutritional impact, right? So what did we do, right? So this business got launched. We right now have only a south footprint. We shall expand. Yeah, we launched products like it's a product called Mix Me, which is fortified with about 17 micronutrients, all designed to take care of nutrition and immunity. Per se, there's a power mix that you can mix with your regular dal atta and have your chapati chawal, and then you'd be really really good. Just some creatives here saying that I'm an Iron Man. It was an Instagram sort of piece, right? And here you're saying I'm gonna solve anemia through an FMCG business by offering food products that have really cool imagery, like okay, who recognize this woman here? Yeah, who all recognize
Ram,
this?
Ramya Krishna, sir. Ramya Krishna.
Correct.
Right.
So spoke for the guys who are not in not focused on South cinema. Yeah, Ramya Krishna is quite a phenomenon from South. She is the mother of Sivagami. Yeah, she's Sivagami, mother of Bahubali. Yeah, so yeah, so
Sir, I just have a question for you, sir. How did you find out about this anemia thing? Was it based on a survey you conducted, or like that anemia segment? How did you identify that first thing?
so this data is existing. Okay, if you just go and say nutrition status of India, you'll find reams and reams of data. Everybody knows it. Nobody did anything about it, and the only way it's getting solved is through the development sector. But the fact is that FMCG businesses can stand up and take onus, and that's what DSM is trying. Yeah, I mean, this is when so the pandemic happened, right? And we gave samples to these are kids or DSM folks, internally, and this in the middle is my favorite photograph, and here are some creatives that I think mothers went through a really tough time at this point of time, right, during the pandemic, because their role as caregivers and teachers and people working and nasty husbands at home all the time, and somewhere their role just really got taken to the next level, and this was our campaign sort of saluting the moms, right? And the work that they did, this was a campaign saying protection building measures outside and Nu-Shakti inside. So really a bit of education and a bit of effort and a lot of purpose, right, behind all of this. And this is my favorite sort of campaign. Anybody heard of this? No? Okay, cool. So, okay, who can tell me what is Sridhar? This is, I think of all the television commercials I've made in my life, this is my favorite one ever. Yeah, I mean, it's just there. Who can tell me what's Sridhan?
Generally, the gold which go wife the house, that form. That
Yes,
Sir, I think
Any property given to the bride before the marriage. So any property which is given to the bride before.
before marriage. Okay, cool. What else?
sir, maybe untapped potential of the women in India.
Yeah. So I don't think it's a third. Sridhan literally means Sri means woman and Dhan means wealth. It was supposed to be woman's wealth. Over time, traditional sort of turned it into something like dowry. So it was the wealth that woman got. So, along with her marriage, many versions, none of them brilliant. But here is our take on what is Tridhan. Yeah. It's going to open a link. Just let me know if you see it. Yeah. If you don't, just holler. Okay. Can you guys see? Could you guys see?
Yes, sir, it's visible
Sir,
now.
now it's visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
And you could hear, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Brilliant. Okay, here it goes.
सोना सोना तू करती पर सोना क्या जाने तेरा मोल रखूं मैं तेरी लोहा हो तो तू हो जाए अनमोल तेरे मिट्टी में है लोहा तेरी लाहू में है लोहा वो पुट्टी लोहा चख ले वो हीरे ये लोहा चख ले लोहा चखले सोना बच्चा अपना ही तो कहना बच्चा लोहा चखले सोना बच्चा अपना ही तो कहना बच्चा वो पुट्टी लोहा चख ले वो हीरे ये लोहा चख ले वो जुगड़े लोहा चख ले
Yeah, do you guys like it?
Yes, sir. That was a very good video.
And we launched it on Dhanteras, right? When everybody's buying gold. And we said, don't invest in gold because your real Stridhan is iron. So invest in your iron. And that's when all the women eating sort of starts to make an insane amount of sense, right? Is there on YouTube? Is there on Facebook? We've launched a second version of this, yeah, under the Project Sridhan umbrella. It's just gone out 3-4 days back. It's based on immunity, and it says 3 out of 4 women are deficient in vitamins. Yeah, so check that out. So net, I think there are 3 lessons for you guys, right? One is it's fine if you don't know what your purpose is, but just be aware about it. That's saying that there's a purpose that resonates with you, and if it can connect with what you do for a living, it'll be brilliant. Yeah. This guy is Baz Luhrmann. Yeah, he's got this. Everybody's free to wear sunscreen. YouTube it is one of the coolest sort of songs you hear. Yeah. Second is there is no perfect solution. It is fundamentally a maximizing function. Yeah, for all the engineers, happy Engineers Day. I think it was there today or a couple of days back, whenever. But it is a maximizing function. You will never get a perfect solution. But between your personal, society, and organization, it is a maximizing function. So the bigger your overlap, the bigger your Venn diagram, the better you are. Yeah. And the third is that next time you're sort of swiping left or right on your career choices, yeah. And I mean, typically choices are determined by cash and my girlfriend is in so and so city, sir, and my boyfriend is in this town, and that designation sounds cooler. I think you should give alignment on purpose, a little bit of thought, and you'd be happier. Yeah. So that's really what I wanted to share with you guys. Yeah, really happy to answer questions on anything, and on purpose or business or things beyond or marketing or whatever, everything's like nothing's out of the park. Yeah? So over to you guys.
Sir, I have one question.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. I could not hear your question.
So, sir, write your question in the chat box. That would be much better. Your voice is getting distracted.
Sorry, I'll wait for your question in the chat box. Yeah. Meanwhile, anybody else?
Sir, I have a question, sir. Sir, Indians generally have a negative perception about these food products. Like,
Yeah.
So, sir, how do you deal with that, sir?
Like, are you talking about processed versus natural or?
No, sir, they have a perception that these food products generally contain a lot of chemicals and they are not good for health. For example, protein shakes. People, they think that they contain a lot of steroids and all,
Yeah.
and they prohibit their kids to consuming them.
I think so. There are sort of two elements to this, right? I think one is to say that when you formulate your products, are you formulating them in the best possible manner? Yeah. And I'll give you an interesting example here. If you look at vitamins, yeah, and you look at minerals, there are ones that are soluble in water, which means that if you get excess, you will just, flush them out the next time you go to a washroom, right? Or as your body processes excesses. And there are ones that accumulate. Okay, like for example, over fortification is a real issue when it comes to say something like iron. Yeah. Now the government sets limits, right? So the government obviously mandates a certain this thing. But in your own product, you ensure that you one adhere by the government. You declare it, in the way the Food Safety Authority calls it out. And so, for example, when we formulated, we said that we formulate iron at only 20%. Yeah. And over fortification on iron sort of gets risky when it goes 2, 3, 4 times, 400, 500 times on a consistent basis. Yeah. So I think one is sort of integrity and judgment and thoughtfulness in the way you formulate the product, right? And the second is a function of of communicating it to the consumer, right? And if you say that this is a product that will solve this and this issue, right, and consumers buy into it, they will consume your product. Yeah, you do use as so if you pick up any sort of advertisement for any product that is promising a functional sort of benefit, right? Uh, like you talk about the skincare guys, they'll say safe on skin, patch test, etc. Right? In food, one would say, one would show say maybe lots of vegetables or Q sort of natural products to allay the consumer sort of fears. Right? So there are these, there are ways to communicate safety to the consumer, and the idea is not to mislead them, but the idea is to actually convey the fact that these products are sort of safe to consume. So yeah, I mean, if you were to look at it from a marketeer standpoint, and it's something that multiple products in multiple categories use, right? So like the endorser through say maybe a doctor or a nutritionist, or these are all very sort of common ways to allay that fear of the consumer that will I be harmed if I consume this. But that being said, naturalness is a trend. It is among the top 3 or 4 sort of drivers of food in the country. So, if you're on trend, there's always a nice tailwind. Yeah. All right. I hope I answered your question. What else?
Sir,
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sir, go.
Yeah.
Sir, another question. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yes.
Sir, as I have already told that DSM was a organization which was founded in 1902 and it's a long journey. So we have during our classes here that you are the best person to speak about something like that. That what is corporate sustainability and what are the secrets of corporate sustainability model of DSM. So if you give some idea about these things.
Sorry, so your voice cracked. I think the question you were asking was that how does DSM sort of ensure sustainability as a central part
Yes, sir.
to,
Yes, sir.
yeah, okay. So,
Yes, sir.
yeah, so you know the interesting thing with DSM is that a lot of the businesses are aligned to the sustainable development goals that the UN calls out, right? There's a very cool project called the Clean Cow Project, right? It's being done in certain parts of the world. Now, what's a Clean Cow Project? The fact is that if you look at greenhouse emissions, emissions by farting, of livestock is one of the biggest causes. So DSM went and developed a very interesting product which would reduce these emissions from animals, right? It's another example of now greenhouse is a focus area for the UN, right? For climate change, there are lots of conversations around it, and it's a very simple, not a simple, but let's say it's a solution which can be frighteningly powerful, right? You just reduce the emissions coming in, you have a serious impact on the carbon footprint, right? There's another example. So DSM, one of the DSM businesses is a business called Dyneema, right? Where we provide fabric that's used for bulletproof jackets. Now, that's a very classic kind of piece, right? The alternate use for it has been, nets. Okay. Now, if you look at pollution in the ocean, nets is among the larger sort of causes, right? Because nets get used, they get torn, and they are discarded, and they land up in the sea. And here's a Dyneema net made from this bulletproof kind of fabric, where the nets last a lot longer and therefore reduce the pollution, and everybody makes more money because the fisherman doesn't need to sort of, yeah. So I think as an organization, DSM ensures that a lot of the businesses, the newer ones and the current ones, are more and more focused on what's good for for the world per se. Yeah. So if you're making vitamins and you work on eradicating or impacting malnutrition, I mean, it's a great overlap of business and purpose, right? Yeah. There was another question I think somebody asked about reaching the poorest section of society. Yeah. I think it's a good question. I don't think too many business models in India can do it profitably. Yeah. I can tell you that I can tell you some of the things that we're trying. We connected with a lot of these rural folks, who used to sell solar lanterns, and they would reach, the hinterland like nobody else can. Like no FMCG would go there, right? Small sort of population clusters, and so we are starting to develop a bit of a business model with them so that everybody in the chain makes money, and we have regular sort of supplies of products reaching them. Very early days yet, but hopefully we'll solve it, along the way. Yeah. What else?
So
Hello,
Devang
sir. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Sir, will you please tell us about the year that you took off from work?
So what do you want to know?
Means, what did you do in that year?
I do.
Means, your experience.
Yeah. So I think I'd been working for about 16, 17 odd years, or 17 odd years, without a break, like a madman. I lived in about 9 or 10 cities. Yeah, just about all over the place. And so there's a personal anecdote when I came home, and I just realized that you know I just realized that I had not spent time with my family because I was traveling 18, 20 days a month, right? I have no issues against or no regrets about anything that I've done in the past in terms of work, and I'm very driven, focused, want to grow, etc. And none of that changes even today. Yeah, none of it changes even today. The fact is that driven, focused, want to grow, want to do, pretty much like you, right? Uh, I mean, the fact is that all of you will walk out of your B school, unfortunately, in a pandemic time sooner rather than later. But and the fact is that you will have some aspirations for your career, and in that aspiration, sometimes you make choices on personal and professional, and sometimes those choices in hindsight you say maybe were not very wise. Yeah. And therefore it's always a great sort of time to pause and say, here's what is important for me, right? And during that time, there was no miracle, or deep sort of miraculous finding, stuff which is very sort of glamorized by movies, right? Who sat, reflected, and found something brilliant, and none of that happened, right? But what happened was that I spent an incredible time doing things that I would have never done, right? And or rather, I always wanted to do but couldn't. I just felt more gratified as an individual. Like the Dead Sea photo, right? It's an innocuous photo. But the fact is that I always wanted to go to the Dead Sea. And the fact is that you would never in your life go to Jordan for a holiday. You would have, you would have 5 or 6 days, and you'd say, my 6 days are really important and I can't waste them. So let me go to a place which I will not regret, right? So you would look for sort of unique-ish experiences, and just make sure that your 6 days or 10 days or whatever period you had off would be perfectly utilized, so that you come back refreshed for another round to go. But now I had time, so I went, and I did random stuff. Like I traced the Crusades route, right? I mean, nobody gives a damn about it, right? It happened like centuries back. You just did it for the heck of it. So for me, it was a lot of time spent there. I went from being able to swim, say maybe 200, 300 meters at a time to swim 2 kilometers at a stretch, right, non-stop, and or with one break or whatever. Yeah? So random stuff, right? Just much happier, and which is why I would suggest that at some point of time you should try it out, and don't lose it along the way, right? I mean, make a bucket list and make a list of things that you want to do. Make sure you follow it up, and if you make time along with your work, and don't lose that personal purpose, and let's say maybe a larger purpose, and maybe you would not need to take a year off like I did, right? So yeah, so that was in a sense a bit of a summary of what I did, yeah, or why I did as well. Okay, what else?
Sir, while working for Coca-Cola, what is the one thing that you all want all of us to learn from their way of doing business, like their operations, what environment and everything? What your overall experience is up there?
That's a really tough question. It's an extremely large. Okay, there are two things that stand out for me, right? Yeah, that one was an extremely senior gentleman who was considered to have contributed a lot to Coke. One of the longest like CEOs was a gentleman called Woodruff, who said that things will go a long way if you don't care about who gets the credit, right? And it's almost like that if you work on the larger sort of good, the performance is heightened to a different level. Yeah. I think the second, and that's a very important sort of thing, right? I think the second thing is that you don't know the potential of something till you sort of explored it, right? The fact is that I think Coke's been around for a century and a quarter, so 20, 130 odd years. Yeah, it started off with one pharmacy somewhere, right, in Atlanta, and it's now amongst the largest brands in the world. I'm reasonably sure when somebody
Yes.
had the yeah somebody had foresight to say that yeah this is where it can reach to, and sort of kept taking it to the next level. Yeah. So I think small things can turn to be insanely large if you do the right thing behind it. I think these are sort of two things that I would say that I find very, very cool.
Sir, can you share something about their operations, like how their distribution? As we see that all over India, even if you go to a remote place, Coca-Cola is available. So, what was the reason behind? So, I just wanted to know about that thing.
So if you look at FMCG distribution in India, right? It's unlike uh, unlike any other, you know, unlike any other country. The sheer number of outlets is sort of insane. Yeah, I think uh, are you guys familiar with how an FMCG distribution model works? Yeah. Okay. Let me try and give you a bit of a summary, right? It's an insane number of hubs and spokes. Okay. If I were to give you an example, saying that there's one factory, okay, producing, let's say, product X, which will go to say maybe 25 CNFs, which will then further, each of those CNFs might have say maybe 2,000, 3,000, distributors. The distributors would sell it not only to outlets but to wholesalers, who would then be hubs for a next step of distribution. And sometimes you might have 2 or 3 wholesalers in the chain who would further distribute it out, right? So it's almost like an amoeba, right? It just sort of spreads through hub, spoke, 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 right? Each of those spoke has like a further spoke per se, right? Now, now the idea is that if you want to set up a distribution like that, it takes two things, right? One is that in each of these places, you need your product to reach every spoke, right? And the second piece is that the consumer needs to have a pull at every spoke level to move the product down further. It's not push, it's actually pull. Okay. So if you look, let's just say that if you look at Unilever, and in Unilever you have, let's say, Lifebuoy. Yeah. An insane amount of pull for Lifebuoy. And let's say you compare it with Dove. Dove also has an insane amount of pull, but with a certain SEC pop strata, right? So if you were to go to a small village, there's enough pull to take Unilever through the multiple hubs and spokes there. Yeah, but there isn't enough pull to take Dove through. Maybe it'll take it through to that one big outlet in that village or in that small town. The guy who would service all the rich in that village. But that's it, right? So there's an entire supply chain play which says that there's a hub spoke and it moves down, and there's a consumer pull which enables that movement, right? And the structure of distribution is fundamentally driven by the fact that you have the ability to service each point. Okay, so even if you were to look at, let's say, in the beverage portfolio of the Coca-Cola company, thumbs up might reach in Andhra to every last corner, but Coke won't, because Coke doesn't have enough pull, right? Even though it rides on the same infrastructure. Yeah. And in parallel, let's just say that in Andhra, Coke might be more widely distributed than, let's say, just to make a point, than, let's say, upcountry Karnataka, because in Andhra, Coke distribution is really strong, but in Karnataka it isn't, right? So it's a function of both of these, and it's a very long sort of answer, and I just hope that I answered your question. If you have something else, on this, I'm happy to sort of answer your question. Do you have a follow up on this?
No, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
So just like suddenly it clicked my mind that earlier there was a Coca-Cola Indian brand, and when this Coca-Cola and other international brands entered, that brand actually vanished.
Yeah.
So at looking at today's market, does India have a capability of to uprise such a brand again in the market?
And so why not? No, the fact is that there are lots of Indian players who've put out brands in the beverage category, and not just in the beverage category, right? In just about every category. I mean, the fact is that you know. I mean, I don't want to take. Okay, I can take names. Like in Tamil Nadu, you have a brand called Bavento, doing reasonably well. Or there's Bindujira, and they're all homegrown brands. And I think what you need to understand is that this is a free economy, right? And free economies are driven by individual entrepreneurship and availability of money. I think in today's day and age, money is available for people who have great ideas. Yeah, I'm sure in the lot today, somebody or the other is going to launch a business, and go get VC funding, and and VCs are looking for guys with a great idea and the will to execute. So there is already proliferation sort of happening. I mean, why don't you look at biscuits, right? At one point of time, there were pretty much a 3-4 kind of player piece, right? And locals existed, but right now, what were called as an unorganized sector of locals, right? Somebody with a little bit of kitchen is now has got the same quality of packaging, the same look and feel as some of the bigger brands. And, I think it's more a function of time and situation, availability of money. I don't think there was ever a shortage of entrepreneurship, but it's a free world, and yeah. All right. What else?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, Soumyajit has
Good evening,
asked
sir.
a question. Okay, yes, Shubham, continue. Yes.
Okay. Sir, before I proceed to my question, thank you for such an insightful session. It was
Sure.
very fruitful for us. And
Sure.
now I would not name companies or businesses,
Yeah.
but as we are talking about purpose, looking at modus operandi of recent businesses, can we
Yeah.
say that the businesses have shrunk their purpose to just profitability and nothing else?
So there's an interesting sort of thing that's happening, right? I think I think businesses are not isolated from the societies that they operate in, right? If you look at consumer choices, consumers are starting to make choices where they say, I will buy the greener brand, I'll buy the brand with a lesser footprint, I'll start to make those choices. If you look at folks like you working out of college, are far more conscious of saying, here's an organization with integrity, and I'd like to work for this organization than earlier. Yeah, and and nothing to do with individual integrity here. It is everything to do with the fact that there's just more awareness, right? So, I mean, the fact is that a Greta Thunberg comes and speaks about climate, and raises more awareness amongst, say, the Gen Z than it existed earlier, right? Because here's an icon who sort of speaks about it. So as societies evolve, so do organizations, right? And they realize that, listen, yeah, shareholder value is only one thing, but street also starts to reward people with other sort of metrics, right? So if you were to go online and do a random check of, let's say, the top 100 Fortune the Fortune top 100 sort of organization, and see their results. Okay, see their annual reports or result templates. They would, the first slide would inevitably be top line, bottom line, and other sort of financial sort of metric, and then it would speak about diversity. They would speak about sort of emissions, and they would speak about say maybe resource usage or whatever metric is relevant for them, and it sort of comes back to the fact that that both consumers and the society starts, they've started to demand it. It's lesser so in India, and if you were to go to say some of the European or other countries, it's far more there. But there's increased awareness, and it's going to come, right? I mean, I think the other day on Instagram, I was generally browsing, and somebody is saying that I'm making X with half the par. I don't know whether he or she will succeed or not, but I got to see it, and somebody is doing something about it. And sooner rather than later, there'll be businesses that will use that as a differentiation and manage to sort of utilize it. All right, what else?
Sir, Soumyajit has a question, sir.
Yeah.
So the question is, like you pursued scuba diving, is it
Yeah.
possible for anyone to continue corporate life and passion in parallel?
Yeah. Why do you believe it's not possible?
So like pursuing a hobby requires lots of to request you someone to take leaves from the job, or sometimes it may hamper the job. So
Yeah, the fact is that any organization that you work in today, yeah, would give you 2-3 weeks of leave in the year, provided you plan for it and you do the right thing, right? I mean, fact is that when you start in your career, and there is just this insane amount of sort of pressure on yourself to do that much more and do that much better, and that should continue. Yeah, but if you plan your holiday 3 months out and say that I want to take off then because I want to go scuba diving, and you work your life around it, I'm guaranteeing you no manager would ever say no. Yeah, ever say no. I mean, if you call out saying that, there's no shame in it, right? There's a reason why the government mandates leaves. Yeah, there's a reason why every organization has leave. And this is okay. It's an expensive hobby. Huh? Let me just call out. Scuba diving is an expensive hobby, and you need to. I live in Delhi, and there's no sea here. Okay, so I need to go somewhere where there's a sea, and frankly, in India, sea except for Pondicherry and Andaman sucks. Okay, so typically it's outside. Yeah, so it's an expensive hobby and it's time consuming. But there are simpler hobbies, right? Like when the pandemic happened, I took a course on writing comedy just for kids, right? It's not that I'm a great comic, and the fact is you're home, right? You're not going out anywhere, and 2 classes a week, and it happened, right? The moment I committed myself to it, I made sure that my calendar was free at that time. If my calendar couldn't be free, I rearranged stuff. And if you put a placeholder, it happens. Okay. Now, if you have a hobby that's going to take half your day, nobody's going to pay you for a full day's work if you want to spend half your day on your hobby. Right. So I think you need to be pragmatic about it. All of this can continue. I know a very cool person who wanted to learn capoeira. Okay, capoeira is like one Brazilian sort of dance martial art form, and she became really serious, and she went to Brazil to learn. Okay, now at that time I found it very foolish, but after I've done it, I thought it was very cool. In hindsight, so but those are extreme sort of choices, right? I think on an ongoing basis. So instead of a Saturday morning just whiling away watching something on TV, yeah, if you dedicate that 1 hour or half an hour or whatever to something that you were fond of, It could be playing an instrument. It could just be listening to music. Yeah, and you find workarounds. You should be able to manage it 9 out of 10 times, right? Yeah, so that's what I would tend to think. Put it in the calendar, make a placeholder, plan for it. It'll not happen by itself. Yeah, you have to make sure that you work things around to make it happen, and it's not that complicated. You know, it's not that complicated. Okay, what else, guys?
Sir,
So
how
I think
long did the ideation process of the Sridhan campaign take for you, sir? The entire ideation process.
Yeah, so typically for any sort of campaign and to execute it out, right? Uh, the the classical sort of timelines are that you work on finding the right insight. Yeah, and that process, I mean, you could get it within 5 minutes, or it could take an insane amount of time, right? But once you've got the insight, typically you convert it into a brief and brief the agency. The agency then uses that insight to come back with rules. That is typically, if the insight is sharp and powerful, 2 to 4 weeks is the usual sort of turnaround time, right? Once those routes are sort of aligned, it turns into scripts, yeah. Uh, and you can maybe add another 2 weeks for that at most, right? And these are sort of comfortable timelines. Post which the agency will, post which there are two options in front of you. One is you can get into testing and say that, listen, here's a script and let me sort of turn it into a cheap sort of cartoon and test it out. And it'll give me a sense on whether it's working or not. And it's almost like insurance, so you pay a little bit of money and you increase your probability of success, because when you waste a campaign at a national level, it's a hell of a lot of money, right? It's an extreme amount of money, and so you spend those 10, 15, 20 lakhs to sort of check that out. Because if you were to go full on, and okay, this is also sort of timelines keeping TV in mind, right? With digital, it's a quick and dirty pull out. Yeah, digital sort of things change, and you don't do testing; you just put it out there and see what it does for you. Yeah, but anyway, but you test it out, and then really, a producer and shooting could be typically when you brief the producer, he would come back with their version of what the storyboard looks like, and then really go ahead and shoot. That's typically maybe 2 to 4 week kind of a procedure. If you go with a really big guy, might be busy and might give you dates later, but typically it's a 2 to 4 week kind of play. Post production is maybe another 2 to 3 weeks. So all in all, between giving your brief out to an end output, you could expect typically anywhere between 3 to 4 months. But obviously you can crunch it if you don't have time. Or if you were to work for a nice global brand and you wanted a brand campaign to work in multiple countries, and then you would test it out with multiple countries, and it could well take 9 months, right? So it's a really a function of, yeah, but what I've given you is, if you're let's say a brand manager here and looking at executing a campaign here, yeah. So those are usually good sort of comfortable timelines. So I think creative ideation is a bit of a process and not just a bit of a bulb that, oh, I got a good idea. So it's a part of it's a process as well. So that's what it typically takes. All
sir,
right.
I guess we can have one more question, sir. If someone has question, please ask.
Sure. All right. There is no question. Life is good.
Okay, sir. Thank
Sir, sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you're
Sir,
audible.
sir, during your long tenure in various companies, in which company do you feel stressed out the most? Means in in Coke or in these?
यार ऐसे
How
सवाल
you
नहीं,
overcome it?
ऐसे सवाल नहीं पूछते यार. They're not good questions to ask. Yeah, you will feel stressed at different points of time in different organizations. It's not some organizations are a little more fast paced and some organizations are not. But the fact is that all of you will face stress and all of you will need to learn how to, right? I don't think stress is the big piece. Yeah, as long as you figure out a way of managing it, right? So for me, honestly, personally, I mean, stress is something that happens and you get used to it, and that's almost never the. I think if you're happy going to work and you enjoy what you do, there is no stress. Yeah, I think that's the only thing that I would say. If you're unhappy going to work, then you might as well find a new place. Yeah, because if you get up and you have to drag yourself to work, then you know it's not the place for you. So sooner rather than later, you'll have to find a new place to work. Yeah. I think there are three things, right? Sometimes you don't like what you're doing in terms of a role. Sometimes you don't like an atmosphere in an organization. And sometimes you don't like the person that you're working with. It happens, right? It happens it happens with everybody who's ever worked in the corporate life. Yeah? It will happen with you. I think it's important to understand what the real issue is and then solve it. Yeah. So what else?
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Cool.
So please accept our sincere appreciation for the outstanding evening session. We are grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experiences with us about what actually business purpose is and the untapped food industry of India. Thank you for
Right.
sharing your experience during Nepal earthquakes and show us how businesses can do more than generating profit, but can also help in serving society as a whole. Thank you, sir, for your thoughts, insights, and excellent interactive session. It will really help us in times to come. Thank you once again, sir.
All right. Thank you, guys.
And sir, as a token of thanks, sir, our class want to show you something, sir.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Yeah,
so much, sir.
save this one for the next meeting as well. Don't waste paper. But I really appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. See you. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Bye.
Thanks.